Oh, Montgomery had a kid yesterday. Interesting. We're proud to welcome Olivia Kate to the Montgomery family. Mom and Olivia doing great. Hashtag our last. The dude's like 3 years older than me, and he just had another kid. God bless him. All right. All right, you ready?
I'm ready to roll.
All right. Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 14 of the Hockey Nuts Podcast. My name is Wayne. I'm here with Steve once again this week. How's it going today, Steve?
Afternoon, Wayne. Going great. Good to be with you for another podcast.
Another week's podcast. We're recording again on our normal Thursday, although it is a little earlier in the day than we normally do. We normally do it around 6 p.m. on Thursdays. It's about a little after 3 in the afternoon on Thursday. So we are doing a little bit earlier this week because we both have things to do tonight later on. So we're just getting it out of the way. So let's we got a lot to talk about this week. First of all, we had the Hall of Fame ceremonies this week. I've got a lot I want to say about that. We had another big week of upsets in the college hockey world, so we'll spend a little time on that. Of course, we got our normal NHL news of the week, and at the end of the show, we've got our fantasy hockey segment, and we got all that and tons more to talk about. But first, before we get going, I want to throw this out there a little bit. I am attempting, and I haven't 100% committed yet, but I am attempting to put together a team, and I haven't even told you about this, Steve, to go to Maine in February to play in a pond hockey tournament.
Oh, wow.
It's the State of Maine Pond Hockey Classic. I believe it's their sixth or seventh year. I think it's their 7th year this February. It's about mid-February. It's in a lake in central Maine, and I'm trying to put together a team. I've got a couple of guys that are from here that have expressed interest in going up with me, and I've got a couple of guys that I know up there that are definitely interested in playing. So between the small group of us, we're going to put together a team, and we're going to play in this tournament.
Man, that's going to be, oh my God, will that be fun?
Oh, it's going to be a blast. It's going to be a blast. And hey, if you want to go with, I know you don't play.
Yeah.
But you can have as many coaches / honorary captains / water boys / whatever.
That's more my league right there. I'll be the water boy.
You can have as many of those as you want. But yeah, I'm planning it's going to be about a 6-day trip because I'm going up. Of course, I'm driving, so it takes an entire day just to make the trip each way. So I'm driving up on Wednesday. The games are on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday if we make the playoffs, and then we're going to drive home Monday. So it's I'll be taking 6 days off in the middle of February just to go up and do this tournament. But it should be a fun time. But I do need some help from the listeners. We're obviously in the very early stages of putting our team together, but I need help because I want to come up with a really good name for our team. So if any of you listeners out there have any ideas of what we should call ourselves, now my idea is obviously it's going to be a mix of players from North Carolina and Maine. So I'd like to have some sort of kind of a reference to where we're from, because we will be probably the team traveling the furthest to get there.
Yeah.
So most of the teams that'll be playing in this tournament are going to be from, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, maybe as far as New York. But I guarantee you we'll probably be the only team that's North Carolina based. So we'll probably get some local attention from the local media up there as being some of the people that are willing to drive that far to go play pond hockey. we're kind of a little crazy that way. So if you're listening to the show and you got an idea of what we should call ourselves, I'm all ears. And if we happen to pick a name that you give us, I personally will buy you some swag from that tournament when we get up there and send it to you. So send me your ideas. Our email address is at feedback@thehockeynuts.com, or you can tweet me. I'm at WayneHalley9. You can tweet Steve too, Steve at sball504man. And we'll be happy to take your suggestions on what our team name should be. Now,
that's going to be so much fun. God, that's going to be fun.
As far as jerseys, I want something obviously very unique as well. And I know it's been done before, but there's a jersey out there, and I haven't run across my teammates yet on what they think of it. But there's a jersey out there that I've got my eye on. It's basically a jersey that is designed to look like one of Don Cherry's jackets. So when you're wearing this jersey, it looks like you got one of the jackets that Don Cherry wears with the tie and everything. It's just printed as part of the jersey. It looks funny as, I mean, it's funny. So I think if we go with that jersey, if I can convince my teammates to wear that and then come up with a team name for us that pays homage to where we're from. My idea was to put patches on the shoulder of it for each player that's playing on the team. Put the patch with the state flag of where they're from.
Oh yeah.
So I would wear the North Carolina state flag, and then I've got friends from Maine that are going to play on the team, so they would wear the Maine state flag on their shoulder. So I want to do something like that as well. So with all that in mind, give me some ideas on what we should name our team, and if we use your team name that we end up picking, I'll be happy to personally buy you some swag from that tournament and send it to you. So, all right. So, and now, of course, I'll have updates as we get closer whether or not we make it, because we don't know 100% sure if we're going to make that tournament. Probably not even until a day or two before we leave, just because of the weather. If we got a nor'easter going up the coast, we just won't be able to go. Right. Or I won't be able to go, because it takes 16 hours to drive up to that spot on good roads, never mind snow-covered roads. So
yeah, and that time of year,
it's a crapshoot. Yeah, it's a crapshoot. I've never attempted a trip up there in the wintertime since we moved down south. So,
wow.
So this would be a first time that I'm actually attempting. We go up almost every summer, but I've never attempted a winter trip, and this will be a first. So we'll see how it goes. But anyway, that's my fun plan for February is playing in a pond hockey tournament.
That'll be a lot of fun.
Yep.
No question about it.
Yep. All right, let's get going on everything now. Of course, we start each week off by talking about our favorite teams, and in this case, it's the Bruins, Rangers, and Carolina Hurricanes. And since the Rangers had the shortest week, let's get them out of the way. And they had 2 games last week.
Right. New York, we played the Edmonton Oilers on the 11th, which was Saturday, and played very well in that game. No problems. We were on top of the game, I felt, the whole way, and won that game pretty much going away against Edmonton. The second game, which was last night against Chicago, I went to bed after the second period because this week for me, as you know, is a very long, difficult week. I'm sure it is for you as well.
Yeah.
And it was 1-1. We were playing good. We could have scored. We had several opportunities to score more than we did. And I figured, well, gosh, we stand a pretty good chance. I got to get some rest. And then my wife comes to bed and wakes me up at, 11 o'clock or whatever. And she said, listen, we lost 6-3. So obviously there was a lot of scoring in that third period, but things didn't go very well. I know they pulled Henrik as well. So maybe it was a letdown from the previous weeks, 6 in a row, I'm not quite sure. And I didn't see the third period to be able to discuss it with you, but 6 wins in a row is pretty good. I'll take it, you know?
Yep.
And playing a game in Chicago against a team that won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago, I'll take that too. You know, we lost, but you're not going to win every game there. So, all in all, I'm happy with 1-1 for the week.
Yep. Well, you're happy with your team. I'm not so much with my team.
Yeah.
Bruins had 3 games last week. 3-2 overtime loss at Toronto on the 10th. A 4-1 loss at against Toronto at home on the 11th. So that classic back-to-back home and home. And then a 4-2 loss at Anaheim on the 15th. And the Bruins led at one point the game at Toronto, and they ended up giving up that game. And then they, I don't know, it's it's frustrating to watch this team right now because they have so many players that are hurt, and we went over this last week, so I don't need to beat a dead horse. You know, the Bruins are hurt. Half the team is their American Hockey League team, and they're just not playing well right now. I watched the first period and a half or so of the Anaheim game before I went to bed last night. I was planning on watching the whole game because I worked until 10 last night just in time to, you know, have the start of the game. And but there was one thing I needed to get done at work last night that I couldn't get done because our computer network went down at work, and it didn't come back up until sometime in the middle of the night. So I had to run back in first thing this morning and do an order before the order deadline, which the order deadline is like 6:30 in the morning. So I got very little sleep. So when I got home last night, I watched about 10 or 15 minutes and then went to bed. And the part of the game that I did watch, the about the second half of the first period and most of the second period, Bruins were actually playing very well. But particularly the second period, I mean, they outshot. At one point, it was like 19-0 or 14-0, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just in shots on goal in the second period alone.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, Anaheim finally gets the puck into the Boston zone. They come right down, take one shot, and score.
Sure.
So it was just one of those nights where, you know, the Bruins pounded and pounded and pounded Anaheim in terms of possession and in terms of overall, you know, amount of time possessing the puck in the Anaheim zone. They won that part of the game. They outshot Anaheim last night. But Josh Gibson made more, I think 40 saves, 41 saves, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Anaheim ends up winning the game 4-2. So it's just one of those frustrating nights where the Bruins were getting the shots, they were getting the opportunities, they just weren't putting it behind the goalie.
Right.
And a lot of that's because of Gibson himself played extremely well. He played very well last night, but at the same time, it's just the lack of scoring touch or the lack of finishing, I guess, is probably due to the fact of the inexperience of the Boston players and the fact that they're missing some of their key guys. Marchand didn't play again last night, and I don't know. It's just frustrating to watch. So the Bruins had 3 games and earned a total of 1 point out of those 3 games this week. So very disappointing week overall for the Boston Bruins. And it doesn't get any easier. They've got, that Anaheim game was just the first of a 3-game West Coast road swing. And then right after that, they get back east and they got to play New Jersey, who's been playing very well. So
yeah, New Jersey has been playing well, and I watched them.
So yeah,
in the same venue, pound Chicago.
So yeah, so the Bruins need to get their guys back, and at the same time, even though they are hurt, Tuukka Rask is not playing up to Tuukka Rask standards either. That hasn't helped.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of Bruins fans ready to. They're going to have to start installing safety nets on some of the buildings there in Boston because there's some fans up there that are about ready to jump at this point. All right, enough about them. Let's talk about the Carolina Hurricanes. They had 3 games this week. They had a 3-1 win at Columbus on the 10th. They had a 4-3 overtime loss against Chicago on the 11th. and a 5-1 win against Dallas on the 13th. I wasn't able to watch much of Carolina this week. Both on the 10th and the 11th, I was working pretty late, missed most of the game. And the one against Dallas on the 13th, I actually chose not to watch that game because I wanted to watch the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and you'll find out why when I talk about it later on in the show. So I really didn't get to watch a lot of Carolina, but it's very encouraging to see how well they've been playing. I did watch kind of shortened games, highlights, whatever you want to call it, of their games, and they're playing very well. I mean, they got 6 out of a possible 7 points.
Right.
I'm sorry, 2, 4, 6. 5 out of a possible 6 points this week.
Right.
My math is terrible today. You can't ask for a better week than that.
No, they played very well. And I watched very little of the Dallas game. Early on in the game, I saw their first goal when they went up 1-0. But I had to turn. I can't remember what the reasoning was. I couldn't watch much of that game. So, but against those 3 teams a year ago, Wayne,
it had been 3 losses.
They might have had 1 point.
Yeah.
And now here they got 5 points. So there's a definite improvement, particularly playing in Columbus. And doing what they did with Chicago. Chicago's playing sputtering. They're playing well, and then they're stinking, and then they're playing well, and they're not getting it together. So, I think that's an excellent week for them, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, again, I'm predicting them to be in the playoffs, and I'm not swaying from that.
No, and I'm not either. They're starting to show signs. Last week we talked about them. They've been kind of sputtering up until last week, and we were saying, look, they got to get things together if they're going to do this playoff thing.
Right.
They got to fight. They're showing signs of being a good team, but the finish isn't there. The killer instinct is not there yet with this team, where they haven't shown the ability to put teams away when they get the chance. Well, this past week they kind of did that. They kind of corrected that. Now, if they can keep down that same path, they'll be fine. They're already way ahead of where they were last year at this time. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but I know for a fact they were not anywhere near 500 at this point in the season last year, and now they are. So, so they're off to a pretty good start for a first month plus of the season. Now they just got to keep it rolling, and this is a team that traditionally, especially in the last 10 years or so, is a team that tends to get better as the season goes on. Partly because of the fact they put themselves behind the 8 ball to start off the season every year, and then have to scratch and claw to get back into it. Now, if they attack the rest of the season the way they have the last several years, in terms of, having to play catch up, now they can use that attack mode and get ahead of some teams and get into the playoff picture.
Right.
Right now they're sitting just outside. I think they're only a point or 2 behind that last playoff spot. So, yeah, they're right there, and we'll take a look at the standings here shortly. But I wanted to talk about some of the other games that went on over the week. Going back to the 9th, I don't know if you saw the overtime goal that Leon Draisaitl scored.
Oh, yes, I did. I watched
to beat the
that
Devils.
Goal.
I mean, those two, Draisaitl and McDavid, had 2 pretty awesome overtime goals over the past week.
That's
one
right.
of them, McDavid scored.
Islanders.
Yep. One of them, McDavid scored, and the other one, Draisaitl scored. But they set each other up with pretty plays.
Wayne, 3-on-3. You got those 2 on your team. Oh, I'm in Vegas. I'm going to the sports book and putting it all down on them.
Yeah.
That's a very tough threesome. It doesn't matter who they put on the ice. I guess they could put a defenseman. But if you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in the 3-on-3, your chances are it's going to be very tough to beat them.
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of the Oilers over the past, last season and into this season. And one of their key plays that they like to do, particularly with that 3-on-3, is to basically get Connor McDavid wound up. So they create a play where they're moving the puck around in their own zone. All the while you see McDavid doing the big circle in his own zone, picking up speed, and then they hit him in the neutral zone with a pass when he's at full speed, and he just blows right by the defenseman. No
Right.
defenseman in the league can keep up with him once he gets up to that top speed. And if they continue to do that play, I don't know how you can stop it. I really don't.
I don't either, unless you camp one of your players right in front of the goalie.
Yeah.
You got two goalies. I mean, the thing that impresses me now with this overtime thing is offside is not going to really be called. They've got it down as far as, it really have to be a mistake, a glaring mistake to have offsides called on them.
Yeah, I've seen
these plays down.
I've seen a couple of cases with this new offside rule and the coach's challenge. I've seen 2 cases already this year. One where the Bruins got burned, one where the Penguins got burned, where they challenged a goal saying that the play was offside. The league said, no, it was onside. So now you got to delay a game penalty. And then the team that had just scored the goal comes out and has a power play and then scores another power play goal. And bang, just like that, it turns into 2 goals.
Oh, yeah.
So it really, it basically cost the Bruins a game at one point. I can't remember the opponent, but it was within the last couple of weeks. And then Pittsburgh had that same situation happen to them. They challenged a goal. The league said, no, it is onside. And the team that they were playing got a goal on the ensuing power play. So, yeah, coaches got to pick and choose now when they challenge for that offsides call. They got to be absolutely sure that it is. And in both those cases, the play was damn close, but ultimately the league got it right. In both cases, those players were in fact onside when the coaches thought otherwise. So yeah. But another game that Thursday that I watched, I actually only watched maybe a period and a half before it was still on, but I wasn't really paying attention after a while, was Lightning versus Kings.
Oh, I missed that game.
Yeah, it was a West Coast game. It was at LA. It was best team in the East, the Lightning, best team in the West, the Kings, playing against each other. But what an anticlimactic game that was. By the end of one, it was 4-0 Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
And I kind of tuned it out after that.
Yeah.
Once Tampa Bay went up 4-0, I'm like, wow, this was kind of a letdown because I was expecting a great game. But the Lightning came out and destroyed them, won that game 5-2. As far as games the rest of the week, I saw that the Capitals beat the Penguins 4-1. And that brings the Capitals almost even with the Penguins. They were at the time they were 9-7-2. The Penguins were, and the Capitals were 9-7-1 after that game. The Golden Knights won a game, and that kid got in. I don't know if it was that game. Who's that number 5 goalie there? Ferguson. That wasn't the game he got in. The Golden Knights and the Jets.
Oh yeah,
Ferguson, the kid that came up from the juniors, he got into a game earlier this week when the Golden Knights were getting blown out, and I don't have it in front of me when who they were playing when they got blown out. They got blown out 8-2, and they let him into the game. But I also heard updates with their goaltending situation is none of those top 3 guys, Subban, Dansk, or Marc-Andre Fleury, none of them are ready to come back anytime soon, from what I understand.
Yeah.
The closest one is Subban, and they're saying he's at least a week away.
And that's weird because they were saying that Fleury was day to day.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure, and we'll talk about it. I'm not quite sure what's going on over there in Vegas, and I'll have some more to talk about later on in the podcast. But, I'm hearing some weird stuff.
Yeah. Well, it seems like every move they make seems to be they're trying to tank for some reason.
Yeah.
And with the draft lottery, the way it's set up, there's no guarantee if you finish dead last in the league that you're going to end up with that number one spot.
Right.
So who knows what they're trying to do there.
Right.
But, yeah. And then you had the 2 games in Sweden this week that were both won by Ottawa.
Right.
They won both games.
Ottawa playing very well.
Yep. And Erik Karlsson had the big weekend there. I guess the crowd was pretty into it. Every time Erik Karlsson got I don't think he scored a goal, but he got 4 assists in those 2 games. And, the crowd was very into it, the hometown boy.
He is definitely, if you look at it as a worldwide, a global sport, which hockey really is, if it's not there now, it's becoming that. He has to be one of the 5 top players in the world. No matter what the position.
Couldn't argue against it.
Yeah. Just extremely popular. His team is doing well. And, he's riding it for all it's worth.
Yep. Yep.
So.
But, yeah, he got most of the attention over there in Sweden, even though there are a couple of other Swedes on both Colorado and Ottawa, but Karlsson is obviously, the top guy playing out of Sweden right now, and then, he obviously gets most of the attention.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, the Penguins Predators also had a game this past weekend. Predators winning that one in a shootout. That was
Predators.
Saturday. That was Saturday night.
Predators playing very well too. They're coming back.
Yep.
They're definitely in the top 10 now in the NHL.
Yep, they're 9-5-2 after that game. The Ducks and the Lightning played a game. Lightning beat the Ducks 2-1. That was on Sunday. I didn't get to see that game, but it was interesting to watch the Lightning go through the West Coast and and have a much easier time with it than Boston always. Boston always seems to get their butts kicked every time they go out west and do that California trip.
Right.
But the Lightning beat the Kings, then they beat the Ducks on Sunday. So, and then meanwhile the Sharks and the Kings played a game that same night. Sharks winning that one 2-1. And I watched a little bit of that game, and that was a good game right up to the end. Now Monday was a light schedule. You just had that one Hurricanes Stars game, and then the Flames and the Blues also played. The Flames blew out the Blues 7-4. And I saw a lot of arguments online with the Monday being the night of the Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of fans that believe or that think that they should not have any games on that night. And then, of course, there's others that say, well, why not have a Hall of Fame game? You have one game in Toronto in the afternoon, and then you have the ceremony at night.
That's a good point.
So, but it was a light schedule anyway. So
it's kind of like Thanksgiving Day with the Detroit Lions. They're always going to play.
Yep.
So you could have induction ceremony day, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are always going to play.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad thing. It wouldn't be a bad idea. Maybe the NHL will take up our idea. Although I'm not, we're not the ones that actually came up with the idea, but anyway. All right. Other than that, it was just a pretty quiet week. It was the Oilers Golden Knights was the blowout where Ferguson got into the game, made his NHL debut.
Mm-hmm.
So now the Golden Knights have officially used 5 goaltenders so far this year.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It really is.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the standings real quick because things are changing. And, of course, in the East, right now, your 1, 2, and 3 in the Metro is New Jersey, Columbus, and Pittsburgh. So New Jersey is barely hanging on to that top spot. They're only up there by a point, but the teams behind them have 2 and 3 games behind, or 3 games in hand. So it's just a matter of time before they drop out of that top spot. The Atlantic top 3 right now are Tampa Bay, Toronto, and Ottawa. And Tampa Bay is pretty much running away with the Atlantic at this point. They're 14-2-2 now this year.
They're running away with the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know,
closest. Yeah, they're 6 points ahead of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then your wild card teams at the moment are Washington and the Islanders at 21 and 20 points respectively. And then your teams that are sitting on the outside looking in are the Rangers and Detroit, although both of them are tied with the Islanders with 20 points apiece. But the Islanders currently hold the tiebreak. And then Carolina's 2 points behind them, as well as Philadelphia, Montreal. Montreal's making a charge up the standings in the last week or two. And then Boston, Florida, and Buffalo. So Boston's third from the bottom in the Eastern Conference. But they're only 4 points out of a playoff spot. So it's kind of a logjam right now.
It is.
In the East. Out west, you've got the Central Division. Top 3 are St. Louis, Winnipeg, Nashville. Pacific top 3 are LA, Vegas, and San Jose. So Vegas is starting to drop a little bit. And then your wild cards are Vancouver and Calgary. And on the outside looking in, you've got Chicago, Dallas, Anaheim, Minnesota, Colorado, Edmonton, and Arizona. Arizona is on pace to have the worst record in regular season history, right up there with Washington from back in the 70s.
Yeah.
They're 2-15-3, and those 2 wins are both overtime wins. So they don't even have a regulation win yet.
Yeah. Very, very bad season for them. And you know what, Wayne? You can't mathematically eliminate them, but they're not going to make the playoffs.
Oh, no.
They have a tremendous season the rest of the way. They win 10 in a row.
Yep.
And they're not going to make the play. It doesn't matter what they do.
It would take a 10 in a row just to get them back near the playoff line.
Right.
They're 13 points back right now.
If they won 10 in a row, they still wouldn't catch Edmonton, the next team above them. So there's just no way. They're toast.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that and sound mean or, as Arizona fans, you can tweet me or whatever. You can, curse me. Yep. But they're not going to make the playoffs, and I really feel for them. I hope things turn around for them.
And that's one of those teams that's struggling at the attendance gate too. And having a season like this is not going to help that situation at all. No. But yeah, right above Arizona, of course, Arizona's dead last, is Edmonton. But Edmonton is only 4 points out of a playoff spot. So, again, very early. It's a logjam in the Western Conference as well. At this point, it's anyone's game. And everybody keeps talking about looking at Thanksgiving weekend as the kind of the measuring stick of how your season is going to go. And we're coming right up on that, another week or so to go. But if it stays this close going into Thanksgiving weekend, how can we have any idea how to predict how the playoffs are going to go? Because right now it's close. It's real close, league-wide, with the exception of Arizona. Any team can make the playoffs at this point.
That's right.
All right, let's talk about some of the stories that have happened over the past week. Starting with some transactions, and we had another trade this week.
Yes.
Edmonton Oilers acquired forward Michael Camilleri in a trade from the Los Angeles Kings for forward Jussi Jokinen on Tuesday. Each player joined his former team this offseason as a free agent. Camilleri had 7 points, 3 goals and 4 assists in 15 games for LA, with 2 points in his past 10 games. Jokinen had 1 assist in 14 games for Edmonton. So it's a case where both players are struggling with their current teams or old teams, whatever you want to call it, and needed a change of scenery. I know I read the article further, and the Oilers were looking for a little bit more offensive punch, if you can believe that. And that's why they went for Camilleri. I guess he definitely is going to be more likely to score goals than UC Jokinen.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure. It's an even swap, don't you think?
Oh yeah. I don't.
There may be some personality issues there. There may be more than just the fact that it's, we need this guy because of this.
Well, Camilleri is a little bit more. He's going to put more points on the boards than Jokinen will, but Jokinen is probably a little bit more responsible in his own end. And, of course, Jokinen is also known for his shootout prowess as well. I don't know if he's still...
His brother's not.
Yeah. I don't know if he's still doing...
Jokinen.
Yeah.
I won't go in on that one.
I don't know if UC Jokinen is still doing it as well in shootouts as he was the first several years for a while there, teams would pick him up just simply because he did so well in shootouts. But anyway, pretty even swap as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
In that front. Now, as far as other transactions that happen around the league, there really wasn't anything else earth-shattering. Again, there's a whole list of players that have been called up, sent down, that kind of stuff. We did have the Antti Niemi who changed teams. He was claimed on waivers by the Canadiens. Obviously, that's insurance for possibly a long-term situation with Carey Price. And then, speaking of Carey Price, the press in Montreal is extremely frustrated with the whole Carey Price situation because they're not getting anything from the management out of Montreal on what the problem really is. Because they keep saying he could come back any day. Kind of like the way Vegas is with their goalies. Could come back any day.
Yeah.
But yet any day is turning into multiple weeks at this point. So what is the problem here?
Yeah.
So and the Montreal press, I've watched some of the coverage on it, mostly on NHL Network, really, and the press is pretty frustrated with the Montreal management and their. I've even heard the word dishonesty with the Carey Price situation.
Right.
And the fact that they went out and picked up Niemi off of waivers tells you there's a little bit more to his injury than just day to day.
When I saw that, I was like, what are they doing? Because Niemi's really not doing well.
No, this is his third team this year, isn't it?
Right.
Because he started with... Where did he start?
I don't know, but he was in Pittsburgh.
That's right. He started with Pittsburgh this year to back up... he was going to back up Matt Murray.
He was in Dallas.
And then he ended up in Florida. Well, he was in Dallas last year.
Right.
But then when they got Ben Bishop, they had no need for him. Let him go. He signs with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh decides they don't want him. He ends up in Florida.
Yep.
And then Florida sent him down.
On waivers.
Pat put him through waivers.
And Montreal picked him up off waivers.
And Montreal picked him up. But every stop he's been at,
he's floundered.
He's floundered. So I think he's just on his farewell tour, and he'll be... This is probably his last season in the league, if you ask me. But, yeah, other than that, I didn't see anything else in terms of players changing teams. All right, let's move on to injuries. Nashville Predators forward Scott Hartnell will be out 3 to 5 weeks with a lower body injury, and defenseman Yannick Weber will also be sidelined 2 to 4 weeks with a lower body injury. Each was placed on injured reserve. Center Nick Bonino, who missed 12 games with a lower body injury, will be in the lineup when the Predators host the Capitals at Bridgestone Arena. Now, of course, that game was last night. Hartnell and Weber were injured during a 5-4 overtime win against the Penguins on Saturday. Hartnell, who's 35, has 7 points in 16 games this season. He signed a 1-year, $1 million contract with the Predators back on July 1st after playing the last 3 seasons with the Blue Jackets. Weber, who's 29, has 2 assists in 12 games this season. Islanders forward Nikolai Kulemin had surgery to repair an upper body injury and will be out for 6 months. Kulemin could miss the rest of the regular season, which ends on April 7th. He was injured in a 2-1 overtime loss to the Oilers at Barclays Center on November 7th. Kulemin has 3 points in 13 games this season. He signed a 4-year, $16.75 million contract with the Islanders back on July 2nd and could become an unrestricted free agent on July 1. So much for his season.
Yeah. Yeah, that's oh, man. And it's not like, Nikolai Kulemin has a prominent role with the Islanders to a certain extent. He's not a guy that comes in off the bench and is a healthy scratch in a number of games, and he plays.
No, he was a top 6 guy. Yeah.
Yep. That one hurts.
Yep. Granted, he's no Jonathan Tavares, but yeah. But nonetheless. All right. Now, as far as any other injury-related stuff, as of today, we had Tyson Yost got reactivated. Nolan Patrick got reactivated today. Travis Zajac got reactivated today. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Zajac plays for the Devils, Patrick with the Flyers, Yost with the Avalanche. Matt Tennyson and Taylor Fedden got put on IR today. They both play for the Sabres. Yesterday, Anders Bjork got put on IR for the Boston Bruins. Mirko Mueller got put on IR for the Devils. And on the 14th, which was Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Jared McCann for the Panthers, Al Montoya for the Canadiens, Andre Burakovsky of the Capitals, Scott Hartnell with the Predators, and Yannick Weber. Of course, we had the articles on those two. Were all put on IR. Activated from IR, Nick Bonino, Matt Niskanen with the Capitals. And Monday, we had Lee Stempniak with the Carolina Hurricanes went back on IR. Didn't they just pull him off last week? I think they did. Zach Dalpe with the Columbus Blue Jackets got put on IR. Travis Hamonic with the Flames got pulled off. Tyler Pitlick of the Stars got pulled off. On the 13th, Buffalo removed Justin Bailey from IR. Bobby Ryan, Mark Borowiecki for the Ottawa Senators got reactivated. And going back to the 11th, Louis Eriksson and Anders Nielsen were both activated from IR. And I saw Eriksson play, so he's back to playing again. Josh Georges for Buffalo, JT Compher from Colorado, Matt Nieto from Colorado, Colin Wilson from Colorado, Nathan Beaulieu from Buffalo, Brett Ritchie from Dallas, Noel Acciari from Boston were all reactivated from IR back on the 10th. And also on the 10th, Anton Slepyshev for Edmonton, Tyler Pitlick of Dallas, Carey Price in Montreal, Patrick Namath from Colorado were all placed on IR. So a lot of IR movements this week.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk suspensions. And
I tell you, I want to
go ahead.
I want to talk real quick. It didn't turn into an injury, but Wayne, you know what I'm going to talk about.
Oh,
I sent you a picture of him. I'm a big Jimmy Vesey fan. He went through some flack over this waiting out to play for the Rangers, and kind of, I'm biased, Wayne. I'm biased, but
you're not.
The kid is doing well, and boy, was it a scary moment in Manhattan the other night when he hit the ice in the game against Edmonton. His face actually hit the skate of the Edmonton player, and I wish I could remember, but I can't, who the player was. Anyways, rather than hitting the skate part of the player's skate, he hit the boot of the skate on the ice, smashed his mouth, and literally knocked a tooth right out of his mouth. He had to have stitches and a root canal, but came back to play. And my hat's off to him, man. You never heard a whimper out of him. Big picture after the game. Said, "I'm sorry, Ma." But, God bless him, man. I hope it's a recover, because, I mean, that's dental work. It's another one of those It's another one of those things, but he's not going to miss one day of play where his injury could have been prevented.
Yep.
And anyways, that's all I had. Just a real quick one. He's going to be okay.
Yep. Yeah, that one didn't turn into a situation where he missed any time. He missed a few shifts there while the team dentist got to work on him in the locker room between games, while he was getting fixed there. But anyway. But yeah, he's back out there now. All right, let's move on to some suspensions/fines. There were no suspensions this week. We did had a couple of fines. Buffalo Sabres defenseman Marco Scandella has been fined $5,000, the maximum allowable under the collective bargaining agreement for slashing Pittsburgh Penguins forward Patrick Hornquist during the NHL game number 267 in Pittsburgh on Tuesday. The incident occurred at 10:21 of the second period. Scandella was assessed a minor penalty for slashing. And San Jose Sharks forward Timo Meier has been fined $2,403 for the maximum allowable under collective bargaining agreement for roughing Vancouver Canucks defenseman Michael Del Zotto during NHL game 260 in San Jose on Saturday. The incident occurred at 18:37 of the third period. Meier was assessed a major penalty for elbowing and a game misconduct. Wait for all that to pass. All right, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Is she outside? No. These damn solicitors that come to our door.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to them. All right, where were we?
We were just finishing up with the suspensions.
The suspensions, yep.
So.
All right. Let's move on to other interesting stories that we came across with this week. First one I had, PK Subban and Braden Holtby are NHL All-Stars who are winning off the ice as well. The Nashville Predators defenseman and Washington Capitals goalie, both 28, were named to Forbes magazine's 30 Under 30 list for sports personalities for 2018. Forbes cites Subban's sponsorship deals with Samsung, Listerine, Gatorade, and Bridgestone, as well as his Olympic gold medal in 2014, 2 All-Star selections, and 2013 Norris Trophy win as reasons for his being on the list. For Holtby, winning the 2016 Vezina Trophy, being a member of 2 All-Star teams, and playing on the 2016 World Cup champion Team Canada were all grounds for selection on the prestigious list. Subban's honor adds to his list of accolades in 2017. Besides helping the Predators reach the Stanley Cup final, Subban was named as one of Canada's 25 hottest bachelors by Hello magazine in October. Hilary Knight, the 28-year-old forward for the U.S. women's hockey team, was also on the list. The star-studded group of 30 who are winning on and off the field was chosen by a blue ribbon panel of experts in their fields, according to Forbes. So I wonder how he got his Listerine endorsement deal. We all remember the Listerine incident in the finals last year.
There was a spike in Listerine purchases when that happened.
Yeah, that certainly was. That was funny. Something that he wouldn't have been able to get away with in Montreal. They wouldn't have stood for that in that town. But yeah, that's almost his antics are almost celebrated. In fact, they are celebrated. It got him on that list.
Yeah.
As one of the 25 hottest bachelors. All right, and the other story I had, the 2017 SAP NHL Global Series could be the start of another long-standing run of playing regular season games in European markets that's similar to the NHL Premier, which ran from 2007 to 2011. The vision and hope is to establish more regular and predictable presence in our international events, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman said prior to the first of two Global Series games between the Avalanche and the Senators at Ericsson Globe in Stockholm on Friday. While we currently have worldwide sponsorship and advertising and licensing agreements, in order for us to really begin to grow the game internationally, which is great for fans who are following the game from outside North America, in North America, and encourages the continuing development of the world-class players. Sweden being a great example, we need to have regular presence with events, Commissioner Bettman said. The international strategy doesn't work without major events, whether it's exhibition games against local clubs, preseason games, regular season games, clinics, and the like. That's something that we do in conjunction with the Players Association, and that's something we're in discussions with them and working on. But our hope is to establish a regular, predictable calendar. The Global Series games are the 27th and 28th regular season games to be played overseas. The league played regular season games in London, Stockholm, Prague, Helsinki, and Berlin during the run of the NHL Premier. It previously played regular season games in Tokyo and Saitama, Japan. Commissioner Bettman said the league will be focused on European markets with strong hockey infrastructure for future regular season games. He said continuing to bring the NHL to strong European hockey markets will allow fans to gain greater interest in the league and continue to encourage the development of world-class players. He also cited Sweden as an example. He said 10% of the current NHL players come from Sweden, and that more than 300 Swedes have combined to play 90,000 NHL regular season games and approximately 8,000 more Stanley Cup playoff games. He said they've combined for roughly 1,500 goals and 15,000 goals and 30,000 assists. So, looks like we're going to have those games going forward.
And I think it's a good thing, Wayne. I think when you go over to China, though, that's too far and too I don't know. I don't see the benefit of that long term.
Well, I can see them continuing to do preseason games there. I just don't see them doing regular season. And because here's like you said, the travel is too much.
And if you look at where they want to play the games, Prague, Stockholm, London, Helsinki. I mean, those are hockey towns. Those are, and if you think about Europe and where they could maybe play a game, I mean, there's a few Austria, perhaps, Vienna. I don't know, but there's quite a few people from Austria in the NHL.
You think Russia would ever let them in?
That I don't know.
As much as they think that their KHL is the best league in the world, do you think they would let NHL? Well, I would like to see some NHL teams play some KHL teams.
Well, it'd be good.
Wouldn't that be something to see?
I don't know. I think that's the place for it, though, is playing games in Europe. as part of the regular season.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it will help to grow the audiences there, certainly build the fan bases there. Not that they don't have them already. Any country that's sending players over here to play is got a fan base over there. Sweden, is probably the best example. Finland,
Denmark.
Yep.
As players, and here's Zuccarello from Norway. Surprisingly, but a long time ago, Norway used to have a real strong presence.
Yep.
In hockey, so that may return.
Yep. So yeah, and the only other story I had was actually one from last week that we forgot to mention, and it's really at a point. It hasn't been officially announced by the NHL yet, but there's many news organizations that were out there talking about it, and that the NHL has finalized a deal for the 2019 Winter Classic. That's not this coming January, but next January. So a year and 2 months away. Everybody was reporting last week that game is going to feature the Boston Bruins and the Chicago Blackhawks, and it's going to be played at the Notre Dame football stadium.
Yeah.
Which will be a huge event.
Oh, that will. That'll be enormous. And they'll have to call him Goal Jesus instead of Touchdown Jesus.
Yeah. So, of course, Chicago would be the home team there. Chicago's only about a 2-hour drive from Notre Dame, depending on what part of Chicago you're coming from. Could be an hour to 2 hours away, depending on what side of the city you live on. But, yeah. It's going to be fun. And since my sister lives in Chicago, that's an event that I would really look forward to trying to go to. Again, another winter trip up north. I don't know if I can pull it off or not.
Oh, I'm telling you, if you get tickets to go to that game, Wayne, and you don't tell me about it, I'm gonna be pretty mad.
Because I got a free place to stay. So
I used to live up there, so I'll go to Chicago in a heartbeat.
Yep. So we'll have to, it's a long ways away. We'll have to see when it comes closer if that becomes a viable option for us. And we'd love to do a podcast from that stadium. That would be fun.
That would be.
Sit there pregame and record a show before all the crowd gets in. I can see it now. All right. All right, let's move on to honors this week. And first, we want to talk about the Hall of Fame ceremonies that happened this week. That was the big event of the week. 7 members were inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame during a ceremony on Monday night. Teemu Selanne, Paul Kariya, Dave Andreychuk, Mark Recchi, Daniel Goyette, and Jeremy Jacobs all gave speeches during their induction. Michael Cabinet, grandson of Claire Drake, spoke on behalf of his gramps. Kariya thanked I'm going to focus on Kariya because this one, obviously being with my ties at University of Maine, he played there. This is one player I followed much closer than the others. Kariya thanked mentors from throughout his life and career, starting with Eno Saliotto. Sassolotto. I don't know why I messed up that name. Who coached him in midget at Burnaby Winter Club. Sassolotto gave the team a sports visualization tape, and for the rest of his career, Kariya said, I would spend countless hours with my eyes closed, visualizing in my mind being Wayne Gretzky, coming behind the net, setting up Yari Curry in the slot, or going across the top of the circles like Brett Hull, one-timing a no-look backhand pass from Adam Oates. As I walk through this hall, and as I look out onto the audience tonight, I'm reminded at how many Hall of Famers influenced the way I tried to play or took me under their wings and taught me what it takes to be a professional on and off the ice. So thank you to the members of the Hockey Hall of Fame for the inspiration and guidance you gave me. And Kariya also thanked one of his coaches at Maine, Grant Stanbrook, who he said had such a profound impact on his life, he will always cherish their friendship. Kariya thanked all of his friends, or his former teammates, but 2 in particular. Steve Ruchin, who was my center for 9 seasons. Thank you for doing all the things that I couldn't or wouldn't do on the ice. by forechecking, backchecking, going into the corners, and playing defense, just to name a few. Kariya said, and Teemu, I simply would not be standing here tonight if I didn't get the chance to play with you. We will always be brothers in this life and the next. And then, of course, the Boston Bruins, of course, had a lot of ties in this year's Hall of Fame as well, with their owner, Jeremy Jacobs, being inducted. He's owned the Boston Bruins since 1975, and in 2011, they ended their 41-year Stanley Cup drought. Jacobs represents the Bruins on the NHL's Board of Governors and was elected chairman of that Board of Governors back in 2007. Despite owning the Bruins for 42 years, Jacobs gave credit to the fans, serving as the driving force behind the franchise. He said, in Boston, we are blessed to have the best sports fans in the world. I made the economic investment in the Bruins, but our fans have made the emotional investment. They are the true owners of this original six team. And then moving on to Mark Recchi, who was also played his last year as a Boston Bruin. Through his 22-year career, Recchi played for the Penguins, Flyers, Canadiens, Carolina Hurricanes, Atlanta Thrashers, Tampa Bay Lightning, and Boston Bruins. His playing days ended with basically with the perfect ending, winning the Stanley Cup in 2011 in his home province after he and the Boston Bruins defeated the Vancouver Canucks in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final at Rogers Arena that year. So yeah,
that's a storybook ending.
So yeah, there's a lot of people in this class that kind of struck home for me. Obviously, Kariya with his main ties. You had Jacobs and Recchi with their Bruins ties, and even Dave Andreychuk played, I think, one season, maybe 2 seasons with the Bruins. Although they were during some of the kind of the dark years the Bruins had there in the mid 90s, mid to late 90s. But yeah, he was a Bruin as well. But yeah, kudos to all of those guys. And I've been, watching a lot of stories that have been coming out about Paul Kariya, because he has pretty much disappeared. He retired in 2010 and has pretty much disappeared from the hockey world until this year, until he got named to the Hall of Fame. He's kind of resurfaced there a little bit. So it's good to see. Even Maine fans really had no idea what he's been up to, because he's kept such a low profile. As it turns out, he's living in Southern California still, not far from where the Ducks play. I guess he's got a house on the beach out there. He goes out surfing almost every day. He's still in tremendous shape. He looks like he could jump back in and play today.
Yeah.
If he didn't have all the concussion issues. So I saw a lot of interviews with him this week, talking about the way it ended for him and all the concussions he went through. And because when he left, he was very, very angry at the game because he played in an era where it was thought that being bigger, stronger player was an advantage.
Right.
And guys like him were being phased out of the game. Smaller, faster, skill type players. Well, now you're seeing
smaller, faster, skilled type players are the ones that are
right. The bigger, stronger, slower guys are being phased out of the league.
You know what? And listen, I always have kept it in my mind. And I don't know why I think this fits in here. And Wayne, you can say, Steve, why did you open your mouth if you want? But, I think about the big, strong, tough guy, the large middle linebacker on the ice. And they can be easily felled. They can be destroyed. I think of Eric Lindros getting his bell rung by Scott Stevens, and that he was never the same. I mean, it really, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
The bigger you are on skates, it could be a disadvantage. And that was a clean hit. That was a clean hit. But you know what I'm saying? There's a smaller guy. I don't know whether I don't know what to say. You don't see that practically at all. It just doesn't happen as much. They're more fleet of foot. It's not as impactful. I don't know. Maybe the league has changed for good. I don't.
Yeah, and I think the league going after these heavy hits. You know, Scott Stevens was known for those heavy hits. In fact, almost the defining play in Korea's, or the defining game in Korea's career, was that Stanley Cup final game against the Devils, where Korea was completely knocked out cold by Scott Stevens. He was laying on his, I don't know if you remember that play, but he's laying on his back, out cold. And then all of a sudden, you know, probably a good 30 seconds after he got hit, you see him take that first breath after he wakes up. You see the fog, you know, hit his visor and fog up as he's coming back to. And then he gets helped off. He can't even skate off the ice on his own. He's literally carried off the ice because he can't stand up anymore. He goes into the locker room, comes back out. It was probably roughly a period later. Comes out and scores one of the biggest goals, if not the biggest goal of his career, to help the Ducks win that game.
Right.
And I saw an interview, and I don't know if that interview took place this week, or I think it took place shortly after the initial announcement because they announced several weeks ago who was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. We knew who it was. It was just they announced it, you know, a couple of months ago, and then they have the ceremony. So they had an interview with Correa, and they talked about that particular game. And Paul Correa doesn't remember the hit. He doesn't remember anything that happened after the hit, including that goal that he scored. And in fact, he says he doesn't remember the next 2 or 3 days after the hit. Doesn't remember a thing. Not a single thing from his life in the days after that hit.
Yeah.
And you know, I think at the very least, if he were to come back in the game, the NHL should put him in an office position where, you know, the player safety obviously would be the first thing I would think of, because he can bring some insight that
absolutely.
a lot of players can't.
But you know, our man George Peros is now the commissioner. He's the head of it. He is the head of the player safety, and you know I like George Peros.
Yep.
So you know, anyways, I just thought I'd throw that in, and I did not know about Korea and his situation. But that hit from Scott Stevens, I'm telling you, that it's just a case where there's a big man who had tremendous fleet of foot. Yep. He was a middle linebacker on the ice, and he went down, and I'm telling you, he went down hard. Yep. When Scott Stevens laid him out, it was every bit as devastating. And like I said, I don't know that player in the NHL today stands a chance against the smaller guys.
The only way they're standing a chance is if they can keep up with those smaller skill players.
Right.
Because it's clear the NHL is trying to get those hits out of the game.
Right.
And I think that's for the better of the league, because, you know, Korea in the years after he retired, or even before he retired, when he started having concussion issue, was very outspoken, saying, look, you know, the game is shooting itself in the foot by allowing these injuries to its star players, because Korea was continually a target.
Right.
A lot of the hits that he sustained and the concussions he sustained were the result of cheap shots by players that just wanted to get him off the ice because he was too dangerous to that,
right.
You know, to the opposition.
Right.
And that started way back in college. I remember vividly in the 93 season, the year that Maine went 42-1-2, won the national championship. In the national semifinal game of that year, against Michigan, Maine had the puck deep in Michigan's zone late in the third period, course, that game ultimately went into overtime, but late in the third period, Maine was buzzing around the Michigan net, throwing shot after shot after shot, just about ready to score. Well, the puck comes out to Korea in the slot, and he just got absolutely decked from behind by one of the Michigan players. And it was a cross-check right to the back of his head as Korea was trying to shoot the puck. And if he would have been able to get that shot off cleanly, he probably would have scored. That would have ended the game right then and there. It would have never gone to overtime because it was like seconds left in the third period when that happened. So, and I remember that cross-check where it basically Korea got completely decked from behind by that Michigan player. And he got targeted like that his whole career because they had no answer for him. He was so much better than these other players that the only way they could stop him is physical force because he was smaller and lighter than everybody else. So he couldn't compete with them physically. And that was their way of stopping it. And for a number of years, that kind of play was allowed in the game. But thankfully, they've taken that play out for the most part, which protects the star players, and I think the game is better for it. So,
agree.
All right, the other. So, congrats to all those guys who got elected to the Hall of Fame. Anyway, our 3 stars of the week were Minnesota Wild Jason Zucker, Tampa Bay Lightning right wing Nikita Kucherov, and Washington Capitals goaltender Braden Holtby. They were the 3 stars for the week ending November 12th. Zucker led the NHL with 7 points in 4 games to power the Wild to a pair of victories. Kucherov ranked second in the NHL with 7 points in 3 games to propel the league-leading Lightning to a perfect road trip through California. Holtby went 3-0-0 with a 1.27 goals against average, .952 save percentage to backstop the Capitals to 3 wins in 4 games. And speaking of Holtby, he became the second fastest goaltender in NHL history to reach 200 wins, making 27 saves in the Capitals' 4-1 victory against the Penguins at Capital One Arena on Friday. Holtby gets his 200th win in his 319th game. Only Ken Dryden, a 6-time Stanley Cup winner with the Canadiens, who got 200 wins in his first 309 games, got there faster.
Yeah.
Holtby's won his last 5 starts, is 9-3 this season with a 2.48 and .924 save percentage. In those 5 games, he had a 1.98 goals against average and .937 save percentage. He's tied for second most in wins in the NHL behind Andrei Vasilevsky of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who has 12. So that's pretty nice company to be in right there.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Did you have anything else in terms of stories before we move on to our power ranking for the week?
No, Wayne, that's good. I think we got it.
All right. So let's do the power ranking.
The power rankings for episode 14. I think it's my turn, Wayne.
It is your turn.
It's my turn, and there's this. I want to preface this. This is the last time I will do the power rankings where I sit down and mathematically figure it out from the standings in the league. Up till this point, I've done it based on the regulation overtime wins, how many, what the goal differential is if you have to go that far, the tiebreakers, all that kind of stuff. From now on, if a team is playing well, I may put them in the rankings up ahead of where they are.
Fair enough.
But I'm basing these power rankings pretty much on the standings, and if you go in and do the math, this is what you'll come up with. It's pretty close. At number 16, and from now on, if a team wins the 6 games in a row, you might find them in the top 10, like my Rangers. Number 16, I have the New York Rangers. Number 15, the New York Islanders. At number 14, I got the Calgary Flames. Number 13, I have the San Jose Sharks. Number 12, the Washington Capitals, although that may change. Number 11, the Vegas Golden Knights. Number 10, the Ottawa Senators. Number 9, the Nashville Predators. Number 8, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Number 7, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Number 6, I'm telling you, they keep rising. The Winnipeg Jets. Number 5, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Number 4, the Los Angeles Kings. Number 3, and as much as I hate to put them down, but I put them down, the New Jersey Devils. Number 2, the St. Louis Blues. And number 1, it's no surprise, the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, they seem to be running away with everything this year.
They are. We'll see how that goes, though, come playoff time.
Well, they're one of the few teams that, as far as their core are concerned, haven't really suffered any injuries yet.
Right.
So I think they'll be just fine in the playoffs. I mean, the question mark is Vasilevsky, but he has played in the playoffs before and has proven he can perform. So I don't know. Tampa Bay is looking too good right now. Let's put it that way.
They are.
They're scary.
I agree with you, Wayne.
Scary good.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's look ahead to some of the games coming up in the next week or so. In fact, I only have the next week's games, although we did say at the beginning of the show that we're probably going to skip a week here. But anyway, Boston has 3 games coming up this week. They're still on the West Coast road trip. They got the California swing. They lost to Anaheim the other night. They've got L.A. tonight, and they've got San Jose on Saturday, both out there. And then they come back east and play at New Jersey on the 22nd. So 3 road games for Boston. And in my mind, if they don't play any better, we're looking at 3 more losses.
I don't know about that, Wayne. And I'll be pulling for you like hell when they play the Devils. You know that.
Yeah.
So
I'm hoping for better results than that, but you know, my mind is telling me they always struggle on that West Coast swing. So
it is a tough one.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. If you can pick up 2 wins in that, get on the plane, come home, and celebrate.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's always a tough one.
Yep. Carolina has 4 games this week. They're at the Islanders tonight. They're at Buffalo on Saturday. They are at home against the Islanders on the 19th. That's Sunday. And they're at the Rangers on the 22nd. No, they're at home against the Rangers on the 22nd.
That's right. They're in Raleigh.
Yep. And that was the game that you were not allowed to go to.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be sitting at home here watching it on TV and wishing I was there.
Yep.
It's one of those things where Thanksgiving, my whole family's in town, so I can't get away for that.
Yep.
So.
All right, and the Rangers have 3 games this week.
We play Columbus tomorrow night. That's a nationally televised game. If you have the NHL network, don't miss it. I'm counting on Henrik Lundqvist making a bounce back tomorrow night. That ought to be a very good game. On Sunday, we play the Ottawa Senators in the Garden. And you'll remember that brings back last year's playoff, the Eastern Conference semifinals, the first game we've had since that, a rematch.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And, there may be some teeth to grind or whatever in that game because I know New York wishes they had that series back.
Bad blood left over from that series, yeah.
I think so. That ought to be a good game anyways. Don't miss it. And then finally, the game you just mentioned, next Wednesday night, the day before Thanksgiving, we play the Carolina Hurricanes in Raleigh, and that's not an easy place to play. Hopefully we can come out with a couple wins this week. If we get one in Carolina, I'm going to be very happy. So we'll just see. The power play is doing real well, Wayne.
Yep.
And we got to hope that continues.
Now, in terms of other games going on around the league, we're looking at tonight. We have the Devils and Maple Leafs, 2 teams that are playing very good right now. We've got Pittsburgh and Ottawa playing tonight as well. Dallas and Tampa Bay, Predators and the Wild. A lot of good games tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Blues Oilers. Tomorrow night, that would be Friday. There's only 2 games on the schedule. One of those is your Rangers-Columbus game. The other one's the Sabres-Red Wings. Not a whole lot there to watch other than that Rangers game.
Right.
Saturday night is another pretty full slate. You've got Pittsburgh against Chicago. That'll be a real good game. Washington and Minnesota at Washington. Islanders and Lightning, with the Islanders playing as well as they are. That should be a pretty good one, although Lightning, may roll over them like they did L.A. Toronto-Montreal is always a good game, no matter how good both teams are playing. That's your Hockey Night in Canada game.
Right.
The Oilers in Dallas. Those are the games that jump out at me on Saturday. On Sunday, other than the Kings Golden Knights, which is probably, that's going to be a rivalry someday. It may not be yet, but it's going to be heading in that direction.
Yeah.
And if the Golden Knights can figure out their goaltending situation, that could be a good game. There's really not a whole lot else on that night schedule other than the Carolina and Rangers games, really to write home about.
Right.
On Monday, the 20th, of course, you and I are probably not going to see many of these games. We got the busiest week of the year coming up for us. But yeah, Nashville and Winnipeg, that's going to be a good game.
That will be a great game.
Yep. Calgary and Washington will be a good game.
Yes, it will. And New Jersey, Minnesota.
Yep. Those will be good. 3 good games Monday night there. It's busy Monday night. 6 games for a Monday is unusual.
Yeah.
But probably because a lot of teams are getting games out of the way earlier in the week because it's a pretty light schedule over the Thanksgiving weekend.
Right.
On Tuesday night, the 21st, very light schedule for a Tuesday. Tuesdays are usually pretty crowded. Only 3 games Tuesday night. Oilers Blues, Canadiens Stars, Canucks Flyers. Pretty light schedule that night. And then on Wednesday, day before Thanksgiving, there's a full slate. 30 out of the 31 teams are playing that night. And I can't tell right off the bat which team is not playing, but chances are, if you're a fan of a team, your team is playing that night. There's only one team not playing that night.
Right.
So I'm sure there's a number of games that are going to be good games to watch that night. And then, of course, going into Thanksgiving, there's no games at all on the NHL schedule Thanksgiving Day.
By the way, I believe it's the New York Islanders.
Nope, they're playing the Flyers.
Oh, they are. You're right.
We can make a game of this. Figure out which team is not playing
Yeah.
on Thanksgiving Eve.
Yeah.
It's not the Canes. It's not the Rangers because they're playing each other. It's not the Bruins. It's not Montreal. Who knows?
It's the Ottawa Senators? Nope, they're playing Washington. Anyway.
So it's probably a West Coast team because that's the conference that has an uneven amount of teams right now. Because all the teams are playing relatively close to home. So, yeah, Thanksgiving in the U.S. is the 23rd, and there's no games that night. So I don't know what I'm going to do with my time. And then, of course, Friday night, the 24th, Black Friday as we call it here in the U.S., 14 games, so almost a full slate. And there's a bunch of matinee games that day. So you can start watching on Black Friday. You can start watching 1 o'clock Eastern all the way through to about 1 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
There'll be hockey on TV to watch, so that's good. All right.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to our minor league hockey minute.
Yes, sir.
And you had a story about Jordan Murray.
Jordan Murray. a little known name perhaps, but again, Wayne, I check out the AHL quite regularly now. And I was reading in there an interesting story, how this goes, about a team I really knew very little about, and that's the Belleville Senators, the farm team for the Ottawa Senators. And I found an article in the AHL. And
they're actually in their first year.
They are. They're in their very first year. That's correct.
Yep.
And the article I found is titled "A Hat Trick for the History Books." Throughout the first 15 games of the Belleville Senators' inaugural AHL season, there have been a lot of firsts. There was the first goal in franchise history by Thomas Chabot. Then the first win in team history against the Hershey Bears. And then, last Saturday night, there was the Senators' first hat trick. Well, sort of. Riverview, New Brunswick native Jordan Murray had a pair of goals in a 5-4 win against the Rochester Americans at Yardman Arena, including the clutch overtime winner. Murray's first of the night came at 2 minutes and 42 seconds of the third period before he secured the overtime winner with just 54 seconds to play. But in the second period, with the Sens down 3-1, Murray launched a shot from just inside the blue line that found its way past Rochester goaltender Adam Wilcox. Murray's hand shot in the air. He thought he had his first goal of the season. The Sens digital manager pushed it out online as a Murray goal. Belleville broadcasters Jack Miller and David Foote called it as a goal for Murray. But then the PA announcement rang through the rink moments later. Belleville Senators' goal, his third of the season, scored by number 17, Max McCormick. A humble man, Murray was asked post-game if he should have had 3. "I honestly don't know," Max said. He didn't tip that first one, so it could be 3, but it honestly doesn't matter to me. I'm just glad we won. Just 24 hours later, Murray had himself a hat trick, the first in team history, after the play was reviewed and a request was made from the Senators' video coach, Dylan Crawford. "It's pretty humbling for sure," Murray said, of scoring the franchise's first hat trick. "Obviously, scoring in this league is extremely hard, and being able to get 3 in one game is something I'll never forget. It was extra special because my parents and grandfather were in town for the weekend." For Murray, scoring is what he does. In 13 career NHL AHL games, the 24-year-old has 4 goals and 3 assists. He played 3 games in the ECHL earlier this year with the Brampton Beast, scoring a goal while he was there. "Anytime I can get points as an offensive defenseman is huge," Murray said. "It's my job. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm here. So to score is a huge confidence boost." And he's got a big fan in Senators head coach Kurt Kleinendorst. "We feel like we got a good player there, and I think he's just kind of reinforced that," Kleinendorst said. "He's a good person, he works hard, and this is what he's capable of when he puts his mind to it. So I'm really happy with him, obviously, and so is the rest of Belleville." So kudos to the Belleville Senators and Jordan Murray on scoring the first hat trick by a defenseman, the first hat trick in their history.
Cool.
Yep.
It's too bad he didn't get to celebrate it on the ice.
Yeah. I wonder how I would feel as a hockey player if that was the case. But in the NHL, it is extensively reviewed, and usually by the end of the night, if you scored the goal, you got credit for it.
Yeah, but they have a lot more camera angles than the American Hockey League guys have.
That's a very good point. Yep.
So yeah, they don't have the video budget that the NHL has. Yeah, well, I was looking around this week for a minor league hockey minute, and I happened to notice who was at the very top of the American Hockey League scoring race, individual scoring race so far this season. Guy by the name of Chris Bourque. I don't know if you know much about Chris Bourque.
I am obviously thinking Raymond Bourque whenever I hear the name Bourque.
Well, he's a former Boston Bruin. He played 18 games with the Boston Bruin, and he is, in fact, one of Ray Bourque's sons.
Okay.
Drafted second round, 33rd overall back in 2004 by the Washington Capitals. Kind of bounced around the NHL a little bit. Never really stuck anywhere. His most lengthy NHL season was 20 games with the Pittsburgh Penguins back in 09-10. And he did, like I said, play 18 games for the Boston Bruins, scoring a goal and 3 assists. But so far this season, he has scored 23 points in 16 games, 7 goals, 16 assists, and leads the American Hockey League in scoring.
That is great.
So far this year. So not really much of a story other than that. It just happened to jump out at me as hey, look who's leading the scoring race in the AHL. And he does have an American Hockey League contract, so he doesn't appear to be going anywhere. He is not under an NHL either one-way or two-way deal.
Oh, okay.
So if he were to play for an NHL team, they would have to sign him to at least a two-way deal before he could be called up.
Right.
But he's excelling there in the American Hockey League. So Chris Bourque is a forward. He's not a defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
So he never picked up Dad's genes in playing the blue line.
Yeah.
But
that's really good, though.
But in this day and age where a lot of these offspring of former NHL players have turned out to be better than Dad, first comes to mind is Max Domi and Jake DeBrusk, son of Louis DeBrusk. This is a case where the opposite is true. Now, in all fairness to Chris Bourque, it's going to be awful hard to fill the shoes of Raymond Bourque, but
yeah, that's true. One of the second or third greatest defensemen of all time.
Well, he's the top scoring defenseman of all time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, arguably one of the top 5 defensemen of all time for sure.
No question.
Yep. So that was my minor league hockey minute. All right, let's move on to the college hockey minute. Of course, Maine was off last week, so there's nothing to talk about there. They have BU this weekend. Both games are technically home games for Maine, although only one of them is taking place at their home rink. The other one will be taking place at, I think it used to be called the Cumberland County Civic Center. It's now called, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I had it and it flew out of my head. But anyway, it's the arena in downtown Portland, Maine. Portland's about a 2.5-hour drive from Orono. So it's not exactly an easy commute for the University of Maine students to play there. But yeah, both games are technically at Maine, although one's in Portland, one's in Orono. And they do these Portland games once or twice a year there's a lot of people, over half the population of the state of Maine lives within that 2-hour drive from Boston, essentially. The southern part, the southwestern corner of the state. That's where most of the people live in that state. Once you get up past Augusta, it gets very rural very quick up in the northern part of the state. Mm-hmm. So the folks down south traditionally don't like to travel to Orono because to them it's a really long drive. Although when people from up north drive down, don't get me started on all that. It's a big thing up there.
And Maine is a big state. It really is.
It is a big state. Yeah, it is. Even when you get to Orono, you're only about halfway up the state. Mm-hmm. You still got a long ways to go to get to the very northern part of the state. But anyway, so they like to play a couple of games down in Portland. Portland's the biggest city in Maine. It's where most of the people in the state of Maine live. They like to play games, and one of those games is this weekend versus BU. Probably, arguably, other than New Hampshire, probably Maine's biggest rival, I guess, if you want to call it that. Although BU doesn't consider Maine their top rival. Obviously, BU-BC is the big thing there with them. But back when Maine was the powerhouse that they used to be, BU Maine was probably some of the better games you could watch in Hockey East. Not so much now because Maine's program's been in decline for several years now. But Anyway, BU's struggling this season, so I'm pretty optimistic that Maine can actually skate with them this time around. So I'm hoping for a split this weekend with BU. All right. As far as upsets last week, there were quite a few of them. On Friday night, number 8, Providence, lost to unranked UMass 5-2. Unranked Michigan beat Minnesota, who's number 4 ranked. That was a 5-4 overtime game. Unranked Colgate beat Harvard 2-1. And Harvard is the number 5 team last week. Unranked RPI beat 16th ranked Quinnipiac 5-3. Unranked UMass Lowell beat number 9 New Hampshire 2-1. And in one of the 2 games of the week for last week, number 3 Denver beat number 1 St. Cloud State 4-2. That was at Denver. And then Michigan Tech, who's unranked, beat number 20 Northern Michigan 4-1. On Saturday night, Michigan State beat Wisconsin 2-0. Michigan State's unranked. Wisconsin's number 7. Number 14, Cornell beat number 5 Harvard again 3-2. Unranked Union beat number 16 Quinnipiac 4-1. Number 15 BU beat number 9 New Hampshire 4-0. Unranked UMass Lowell beat number 13 ranked Northeastern 4-2. And Denver again beat St. Cloud State. That was a number 3 versus number 1 game. That was a 5-1 game that second night. And then number 12, Minnesota Duluth lost to number 18, Western Michigan 5-0. Now, a story coming out of that St. Cloud versus Denver series. I saw a story this week that the NCHC, which is the conference that St. Cloud State and Denver played in, issued letters of reprimand to both Denver coach Jim Montgomery and St. Cloud coach Bob Motzko for their conduct during this past weekend's series. The reprimand stems from incidents that occurred during and following the game at Magnus Arena in Denver on Saturday, November 11th, featuring the 2 teams. So that was the game that ended 5-1 for Denver. 2 separate releases were sent out Tuesday afternoon when these letters were made known. Montgomery's violations included using inappropriate language toward an opposing team's player during Saturday's game, as well as displaying a lack of conduct and sportsmanship on the ice at the conclusion of Saturday's contest. Motzko's violations included inappropriate comments provided to the media following Friday's game that were directed toward NCHC on-ice officials and staff, as well as displaying a lack of conduct and sportsmanship on the ice at the conclusion of Saturday's contest. Denver entered the weekend ranked number 3 and swept number 1 ranked St. Cloud State in the 2 games. So, yeah, there's that. And today I noticed a tweet from Jim Montgomery, and I lost it here. 2 days ago, what's today? Thursday.
Yep.
Hang on. It just went away. I hate it when Twitter automatically updates that. Really? All right, so 2 days ago, which was the day that these announcements were made, Jim Montgomery tweeted, where is it? Here it is. He tweeted 2 days ago. Here's what happened between Coach Motzko and I. We agreed to have a Miller Lite, and he said because it's less filling, and I said it tastes great, and it quickly got heated.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not a beer drinker, but that sounds like a very, that might just bring out the fighting words in me.
So yeah, obviously Jim Montgomery is not taking these things too seriously, and nor should he. Probably get in the heat of the moment. They said some things to each other, and I guess
The rest is history.
the rest is history. Yeah, it'll be something to watch later on in the season when they play. They're in the same conference, so they will be playing each other again at St. Cloud State the next time around. So we'll have to pay attention when that happens. All right, as far as big games coming up this weekend between ranked teams, number 17 Michigan is going to be at Wisconsin for 2 games. Number 8 Clarkson is going to be at Colgate, who's number 19 right now, on Friday night. Also on Friday night, number 3 North Dakota plays number 1 Denver. So another number 3 versus number 1. Obviously, the rankings have changed. And for 2 weekends in a row, we have a number 3 versus number 1 matchup.
That will be a great.
And the North Dakota Denver, that's a 2-game set at Denver. And you said it. It's going to be a great one. If you can find that one on TV, it'll be worth watching for sure. Mm-hmm. And that's a Friday night, Saturday night set. And then also on Friday night, number 13 Harvard plays at number 7 Minnesota. On Saturday night, you have number 8 Clarkson playing number 6 Cornell, which should be a real good one in the ECAC. And again, the Harvard-Minnesota series, there's 2 games there. So a couple of 2-game sets between ranked teams this weekend. All right, let's go on to the rankings. This is the U.S. College Hockey Online poll. At number 10 this week is Providence. Number 9 is Wisconsin. Number 8, Clarkson. Number 7, Minnesota. Number 6, Cornell, who actually earned 4 first-place votes. Number 5 this week is Minnesota State. And going back to the number 6, Cornell, why would you would ask, does Cornell get 4 first-place votes? Well, they're 6-0-0 right now. Right. And some people just believe, well, if they're undefeated, they should be at the top, right?
Yeah.
So, number 4 this week is Notre Dame. Number 3 this week is North Dakota, and they got 2 first-place votes. Number 2 this week is St. Cloud State, so they dropped from that number 1 spot into number 2 because of the defeat to Denver twice. But they still got 1 first-place vote, even though they lost twice to Denver. I'd like to know who that guy was. And number 1 back on top this week is Denver with 43 first-place votes.
Yeah.
Now, I want to touch on the pairwise rankings this week because they don't normally come out till January, but I noticed that they're up already, and I'm not sure how long they've been up, but they're up. And if you look at the pairwise rankings, you've got at number 1, you've got Cornell. Number 2, St. Cloud State. Number 3, Denver. Number 4, Minnesota State. 5, Clarkson. 6, Western Michigan. 7, Minnesota. 8, Notre Dame. 9, Michigan. 10, North Dakota. 11, New Hampshire. Number 12, Northern Michigan. Number 13, Omaha. 14, Northeastern. 15, Colgate. And 16, Bowling Green. So if the season were to end today, those 16 teams would be playing in the NCAA tournament, and everybody else would be on the outside looking in.
God.
And if you're a Maine fan listening to us and you're curious, Maine is at number 54 out of 60 teams. Very disappointing. Arizona State is higher up than they are right now.
Wow. Arizona State.
What world would you think that Arizona State would be better than Maine in college hockey?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. I watched a college hockey game with my wife this week. We sat down and watched Penn State and Notre Dame on Saturday night, actually before the Rangers game, if I'm not mistaken. And I was very impressed with the play of Jake Evans. And if I'm not mistaken, he's the leading scorer in the nation this year.
Okay.
So they are definitely.
He is.
They've got some. Is that right?
Yep, 19 points in 12 games. He's only up by 1 point over Troy Terry of Denver, but he's currently leading the nation right now.
Looks good, man. I tell you, he's a good player. So once again, kudos to you, Wayne. Thank you so much for getting me in your tutelage with college hockey.
Sometimes it's hard to find games on TV. That's the only trouble.
Yep.
Is you got to search a little bit harder to find games because
That's right.
the press doesn't give any love to college hockey the way they do college basketball and football.
That's right.
So, but it's fun. It's fun to watch when you can get them. And like I said, the game of the week this week is your North Dakota Denver. If you can find either of those two games, Friday or Saturday night on TV, I wouldn't be surprised if you can get them. But you definitely want to watch. Those are two great teams in college hockey right now. All right, let's move on to our picks of the week. And I'll just throw mine out there because it's just a quick one. And I couldn't really find a real big story to add for the news of the week. But there was one story that kind of struck me as very funny. Thomas Tatar released a video yesterday, and it looks like it was a video taken from the I don't know if it's it looks like it's from a camera hanging over center ice. I don't know if it's a camera that's mounted in the scoreboard, but it's somewhere in that vicinity. Looks like it's hanging over the blue line, looking at the entrance to the ice where the Detroit Red Wings come out onto the ice. Right at center ice.
Right.
All of a sudden, you see this video. Thomas Tatar steps out on the ice and immediately slips and falls right onto his back. As it turns out, he forgot to remove his skate guards off of his skates. And he falls to the ice, kind of sits there for a minute because he knows immediately what had happened. And then he finally gets on his knees and takes the skate guards and throws them off to the side and then starts skating. He was just in sweats and no helmet or nothing, just skates, gloves, stick, and sweats. So apparently, according to the information, that the video was recorded back on September 25th, and it was Thomas Tatar taking his first ever skate at Little Caesars Arena. So right after they had just put the ice in. First time he ever skates at the brand new arena, he slips and falls because he's still got his skate guards on. Now, you see this occasionally around the league, but usually it's in a case where the players are playing pranks on each other. One of the favorite things to do, particularly with rookies, is you have someone sneak into the locker room before the player gets there, and you put clear hockey tape, and you completely cover the skate blade with the clear hockey tape. So you can't tell the tape is on the blade because it's clear. And then the player steps out on the ice and completely falls down because he steps onto the tape. It's an old prank that people do. But in this case, he just simply forgot to take his skate guards off and went right on the ice and fell right down. So he tweeted it out, and the caption with his tweet says, "Here is something that will make you smile. My first skate at Little Caesars Arena didn't go as I thought it would." And then he goes on, stick, check. Gloves, check. Skate guards, Hashtag welcome to LCA Tats. Hashtag damn you skate guards. Hashtag felt good. Hashtag what an idiot. Hashtag he goes on and on and on. So yeah, that was my story of the week.
That's good, Wayne.
Yep.
That's a good one. Mine is a provocative one, Wayne, and it will promote a discussion. But I know you followed this story very closely, and so I wanted to get your take on it. But this is really something, and it involves Vadim Shipachyov, formerly of the Vegas Golden Knights, who renounced his contract and retired from the NHL. I can't remember a time where I've ever seen that after playing 3 games. Ever. I've never seen that happen in the NHL. But it has created quite a big stir in the KHL. And Shipachyov, if you'll just allow me. He was like, as you know, we've reported on the show, he was in the top 5 scorers in the KHL last year. So coming over to Vegas, there was a lot placed on his shoulders. They believed that he was going to not only be a starter, but a top 6 guy. And we don't know what was said behind closed doors or anything like that. But and I encourage our listeners once again, go on to the Hockey Writers website, if nothing more than just to read their stories. Extremely interesting stories each week from around the NHL and really around the world, in the world of hockey. And this week they had a story entitled "Shipachev in His Own Words," translated, regarding the story of Vadim Shipachev. It's written by Alessandro Serin Rosso, and I hope I've said that correctly. But he does ask, it is like a question and answer session, and I had this article and I wanted to read it real quickly. Considered one of the best signings from Europe this summer, Vadim Shipachev has had a really hard time with the Vegas Golden Knights. As a result, after only 3 games played, he announced his retirement from the NHL and signed back home with SKA St. Petersburg, and that is who he played with before he left last year. After signing a 2-year, $4.5 million contract in the NHL, Shipachev inked a deal worth only 30 million rubles when he came back to the KHL, which translates to about $500,000, significantly less than what other KHL stars make with their teams. In this translated interview, originally appearing on SKA St. Petersburg's official site, Shipachev explained the situation with the Golden Knights from the inside, offering an interesting point of view after reading about this story from many different angles in the past few weeks. Shipachev back home. This is the question posed to him. What feelings do you have after you return to St. Petersburg? And Shipachev's reply was, of course, I'm very happy. It was the best option for me. I watched SKA games and I saw that the team changed since last year, but the system keeps on getting good results. And if that's not enough, we had some good players stepping up, like New Jersey Devils prospect Mikhail Maltsev and Chicago Blackhawks draftee Andrei Altibamarkian, and others will do it soon. In the NHL, I didn't get what I was promised, but whatever happens will only make you stronger. Many other players who now play for SKA had a path similar to what I had, and maybe this is the best strategy. Now I understand that each Russian player should think 10 times before moving overseas, because the picture in the NHL is really different from the one that teams and agents paint. So what happened there? The question was posed. Shipachev's reply was, I didn't have any problem with the practices, and they keep on saying that they were counting on me. Right before the season, the general manager, and that's George McPhee, calls me and says that they need to send one player to the AHL, and they couldn't send anyone else. Something like, please help us. We just need to swap a couple of defensemen, and then you'll have your debut. And on the game night, they call me again, saying they couldn't do everything they wanted, and that I need to play in the AHL. That means that they told me one thing, but when things went on with the real events, it was an entirely different thing. And the person who wrote the article poses, you scored in your very first game. And Shipachev says, we won, but the coach told me that I wouldn't play much anyway. They told me that all was good, but I was playing on the 4th line. I didn't even need to play on the power play. I simply wanted to play in each game. And as a result, again, the comment is, and as a result, you were sent down again. And Shipachev says, the media wrote that I wasn't in good shape, that I wasn't ready. But how could they jump to this conclusion? I played 3 games and didn't even look that bad for my 10 minutes. Even my teammates couldn't understand what was going on. The locker room environment was the only good thing there in Vegas. The guys always tried to be positive, but of course, I wasn't always in the right mood for that. And then it goes on, how did the contract termination process go? And he said, as soon as I said that I didn't want to play in the NHL anymore and that I was ready to repay my signing bonus, my agent called the club and organized everything. So it was needed to call the league and the players agency, and that's why the whole process lasted until today. And then it says, Shapachov satisfied with return. Was SKA your only option? He replied, I said right away that I wouldn't really talk with any other team. I wanted to play for SKA and play for the team with which I won 2 Gagarin Cups and where I only had great feelings. But of course, first it was needed to talk with the board and the coaches to understand if they really wanted me back on the team. I didn't have anywhere to practice in Vegas, and when I got to Russia, SKA offered me right away to practice at the Hockey City facility. I was then told that we could talk about the contract only once they got all the papers from the USA. The Golden Knights took some time to get to the documents completed. I knew that SKA won 20 straight games, and we reported on that this year.
Yep.
And also that I just could have been told we were a good team already, so no thanks. But the team decided to sign me anyway, and I'm really grateful for that. You ready to play right now? He was asked. Shapachov replied, I practice both on the ice and in the gym. Of course, I really miss playing hockey, but it's hard to judge my shape. It can be done only after practicing with the team. When you're alone, it's really hard to understand. And the final question, what did you learn with this experience? Shapachov replied, I'm glad to be back home, but I'm also sad that it had to go that way from Las Vegas. I just brought with me the puck with which I scored my first NHL goal, and that's it. But even the worst experience can always help you, and probably it will make me even more satisfied here in St. Petersburg. It's a it's a powerful article. And if you really think about it. And I liken it once again, and we talked about this last week, Wayne. I liken it to a guy that's come overseas and played for our team, as you know, Pavel Buchnevich. And he came over not being able, just like Shapachov, could not speak one word of English. But rather than, and he was not the touted player. He came over again from another steel town, Sharapovets in Russia. He played for Severstall, which is a large steel company that owns the team over there. He came over, and that's his hometown team. He came over to the NHL, and the Rangers put him in with a family that spoke only English. So he improved on his English. He improved on the culture here in America as far as hockey is concerned. And now he's doing very well. He's one of the best players on our team this year in terms of goal scoring. He's made improvements leaps and bounds. And I think, George McPhee knows very well, the general manager there at Vegas, that there's only one or two Alexander Ovechkins out there. There's not many of them. They don't grow on trees. So to bring over another guy from Russia, Vadim Shapachov, in the hopes that he is going to be the next Alexander Ovechkin, that's pretty far thinking. I don't think even George McPhee was thinking that. But in bringing over a guy who definitely is not expected to be that type of a player, and that's Pavel Buchnevich, the Rangers were successful because I believe they put him through a training course, if you will, on how to be a hockey player in the United States. And I don't know what your take on that is, but that's my feelings. A very good article.
Well, there's a lot going on here. First and foremost, if the Vegas Golden Knights had promised him a top 6 role before he came over, saying, yeah, you're going to be the best player on our team.
Right.
That's their mistake. They shouldn't have done that. Because time has proven, and there's been many, many examples, that just because you have success in the KHL does not mean you're automatically going to be a great player in the NHL.
That's right.
It can happen, but it's not guaranteed. There's a lot of dynamics there, language barriers, style of play, whatever, there's many different variables there from player to player that make it extremely difficult to predict what a Russian player is going to do when they get over here. I mean, there's countless examples of players that have come over here and have done nothing. And there's also plenty that have proven that they're a good fit for the NHL. So for Vegas to have promised him that, if that's true, of course that's his allegation, for him to promise that right off the bat from McPhee, that's their first mistake. Secondly, when he did ultimately come over here, obviously there was something in his game that Coach Gallant didn't like.
Right.
Because for whatever reason, Gallant decided he didn't want to play Shipshev. And he probably went to George McPhee and said, look, this guy doesn't fit our system.
Mm-hmm.
He's not good enough. Or maybe he's not willing to play defense. We don't know what the problems are because the Vegas Golden Knights haven't really been outgoing with that information. And, they don't have to if they don't want to. It's their team. It's their organization. They can do what they want. But, we don't know what the issue was. But clearly, to me anyway, just from my experience, not only playing but, being a fan for all these years, is there was something not right with him.
Right.
In the eyes of, at the very least, Gallant and probably McPhee. And so that left McPhee having to backpedal and and try to get out of that mess, because it's McPhee's job to sign the players to the contract. It's Gallant's job to get the most out of them on the ice.
Right.
And if he couldn't get what he wanted to get from Shipachyov, then there's no, why would he want to play him if he's not going to produce? Yeah, he scored that goal. It was a bit of a garbage goal. I watched the game. It was against the Bruins, so it was a garbage goal. He picked up a rebound in front and put it in. So it's not like it took a tremendous amount of skill to score that. But that aside, he did score a goal in his first game, but he was practically invisible in the other two. So. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that happens. I think the NHL needs to be careful when they're bringing these players over and not promise them too much. Say, look, all we're giving you is an opportunity.
That's right. And
that's what they should do.
Wayne, you hit the nail on the head. And again, I'm going from a player who was not nearly in the caliber of Shipachyov over there in Pavel Buchnevich. He was nowhere near the caliber of that type of a player. But the Rangers brought him over, and the comments from Scotty Arniel, who's the assistant coach at the Rangers, was he will be given every opportunity to make the team. Now, he had to go down to the AHL more than once. One time because of injury, one time to improve his play. And he was willing to do that. So maybe it could be partly attitude. We don't know. But, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to approach it. And in this case, we're listening to Shipachyov's side.
Right.
But it's definitely an interesting article and a different interesting topic.
Yep. Yep. But yeah, it's a lesson for all the NHL GMs is don't overpromise some of these guys if unless you're 100% certain that you're getting what you think you're getting.
Right.
Because the bottom line is he wasn't playing as well as some of the other people that were in the organization, and Gallant wanted to play them over him.
Right.
So, all they should promise these players coming over is this is an opportunity to make the team. If it doesn't happen, if you're not good enough when you come over here, we're going to send you down to the minor leagues. That reality should be given to them. Apparently, in this case, he wasn't told that he was pretty much promised a top 6 role.
Right.
And he claims that all he was caring about was just being on the team. But in today's NHL, that third and fourth line, you can't have a $4.5 million guy on your third and fourth line.
Right.
It just can't be that way.
Right.
And especially a guy that allegedly doesn't play defense, which I've heard about him.
Well, you know, and Wayne, what do you think about delusions of grandeur? Here he is in Russia playing on SKA St. Petersburg with the likes of Pavel Datsuk and Ilya Kovalchuk, who earned $100 million on a contract. That may have, filtered into his mind.
Yeah.
While he's over there, hey, I'll go over to the United States and make a lot of money. I'm not saying it did, but
and then when Chibyshev returns to Russia, to hear that he only got $500,000 for this year means that SKA took advantage of him, because he only wanted to play for them. He said it right up front.
Yeah.
He probably shouldn't have done that either.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, he wants to play for them because they're going to win the Gagarin Cup again this year. I mean, have they lost more than 2 games yet this year? I don't think they have.
Yeah.
They're 35 games into their schedule, and they've lost 2.
Yeah.
Of course he wants to play for that team when he goes back there.
Yeah.
So he took a hometown discount to get on that team, and he should have earned at least 7 digits in that league.
Right.
Granted, he's not going to make $4 million. I think the top paid player only makes $5 million, I think, in that league. So, and there's only a dozen or so players that make more than $1 million in that league. So, it's not a high paying league as it relates to the NHL.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, it's just, you feel bad for the guy because he's completely caught in the middle of all this mess, and he feels like the Vegas Golden Knights kind of did him wrong, and then he goes back to Russia, and now SKA is taking advantage of his situation to pay him dirt cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of feel bad for the guy a little bit, but
well, true.
I guess lesson learned there, huh?
Lesson learned.
Yep.
Lesson learned.
It's not, grass isn't always greener.
That's right. Good, Wayne. Thank you.
All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and wrap things up. I don't have anything else. And we had talked before the show. I don't know if we said it at the beginning of the show or not, but it looks like we are going to have to take next week off because, as I've mentioned in past podcasts, I work in the grocery industry, and with the American Thanksgiving holiday coming up, it's the busiest week of the year coming up for me. So, right. And it's pretty busy for you. But
yes, it is.
On top of that, you've got, on the other side of the holiday, you've got a lot of family that's going to be in town over the next weekend. You're going to have a full house, so you won't have time to do it after the holiday either. So I don't have time to do it before. You don't have time to do it after. So we decided before the show that we're going to skip next week. So that puts us at Thursday, November 30th as our next record date. So that'll probably end up being a pretty long show because we'll have a couple of weeks to catch up on, but we'll be back in 2 weeks anyway to get things going again. I may pop in here and there if there's any big stories that come out that warrant me coming in and doing a short solo discussion. I may do that. I've said that in the past and I haven't done it, but there really hasn't been anything earth-shattering either to talk about. But if something big happens that I feel like we need to talk about, we'll go ahead and do a short little solo show at that point. And that could happen at any time. But in the meantime, probably just plan on our next one to be on November 30th. That's Thursday. So,
very good.
Because I know a lot of Americans aren't going to be listening to podcasts over the holiday weekend anyway. They're going to be, spending it with family and friends over that holiday weekend anyway. So it's kind of a weird week for everybody in the U.S. for sure. All right. Well, let's go ahead and finish things up. As a reminder, you can get us at our Twitter handles at WayneHalley9 and at SBall504man. You can email us at feedback@thehockeynuts.com if you want to add anything to the show. And you can reach us through our Facebook page at facebook.com/thehockeynuts. And, of course, we live stream and record the recording of this podcast and put it up on YouTube at thehockeynest.com/YouTube. And of course, our podcast can be had anywhere you can get podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and any podcast app that you can get on your Android or iPhone. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. And until next week, unless you have anything else to add, we're going to go ahead and kill it.
Nothing else. Good working with you, Wayne, and we'll look forward to seeing you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, Wayne.
Yeah, you too. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. We'll see you 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
All right.
Yes.
Have a good night.
All right.
All right.
There was some cutting in and out there on my end.
Yeah, it should be fine on my end. You sounded fine, and well, mine always sounds fine anyway because I'm recording direct.
Yeah. Oh, that was good. That was really good. That was a very good podcast. That one, I'm looking forward to listening to it.